Oh, friends, welcome to the trifecta of joy. I am so thrilled to share our guest with you. Kat Mullin is a self-awareness coach and communication expert with over 20 years in the personal development industry. Her passion is to serve others as a holistic health practitioner, a certified massage therapist, Reiki master practitioner, master NLP breakthrough coach, master practitioner of timeline therapy, and a published author. Kat, I'm so glad you're here.
I am so excited, Tanya. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we have to talk about this book,
Yes,
Raising Badass Humans.
that's my goal.
That's your goal, and that is the title of your book.
It
And
is.
like, and I have to admit that I have been fortunate enough to see your manuscript because it hasn't been published yet. By the time this airs, it will be published, but it
Yay.
hasn't been published yet. And I have to say that what I love, there's so many things I love, but what I love is how authentic you are about your own challenges as a parent. And
Thank you.
yet, you talk about what it means to be a badass human. Badass means brave, authentic, decisive, accepting, strong, and supportive. That's badass. Human is honest, unstoppable, mindful, accountable, and non-judgmental. And you go on to say a badass human is a person who lives their truth, not society's truth, not their family's truth, not their friends' truth, not an organization's truth, their truth.
100%. And that is not an easy thing to do in this world.
That is not an easy thing to do in this world. It really isn't. So I've got to ask, like, what was this pivotal moment in your life that made you decide that your job was not just to raise badass humans, but also help others raise badass humans?
So, a few years ago, my husband and I were going through some very toxic patterns, and I saw the damage it was doing to my kids. And that just wasn't acceptable. Like, I knew I grew up not in the best environment. It
Okay.
wasn't horrible. I had a good childhood, but there definitely were things about it that did not allow me to live my truth. And I always said my main goal was for my kids to be comfortable in their skin because I wasn't.
Ah,
And then we had kids, and I saw how hard it is to actually raise them to be comfortable if I'm still not. And my husband and I we were really struggling, both of us separately, with our own patterns that were handed down to us. And then together, clashing big time. And I saw my kids starting to become depressed, people pleasers, anxious. And I was just like, this is not acceptable at all. And my husband and I actually had to separate so that I could start working on myself. And he did as well. But the very pivotal moment was the night we separated, where I just said, this is enough. The kids can't witness us fighting anymore in this toxic way. They had witnessed sometimes, we were able to quote unquote fight in a very healthy way and see us come together and work everything out. But it had just been getting more and more toxic. And so I left with the kids and I said, this is it. I'm starting my healing journey. And I'm doing this for the kids and for myself. And that is what had to happen. And that is fine because we grew so much in that time, all of us. And I started to see what I needed to do, how I needed to be self-aware and take accountability for my part in things, not just blame him for everything, and be present with my kids. That was the biggest thing, connecting with them on a personal level.
honoring their experience of what was happening.
Exactly. And just letting them know they each mattered individually.
Wow. So as you moved through these challenges, what inspired you to decide to write a book about raising badass humans?
It started with, well, I've always wanted to write a book. I just always have, but I had all that self-doubt. I'm not a good enough writer. Who wants to hear my message? Who am I? Um, First, I started a Facebook group called Date Your Kids, which is
Oh,
still active, but it's not my main focus anymore. It is still an active Facebook group, but that was the first thing I did, was start that group to encourage other parents to be fully present with their kids, to take their kids on dates, just one on one. Especially when you have multiple kids, it's so important because you don't ever at home get that alone time.
mhm.
So I had committed to once a month taking each kid on a separate date, spending a few hours with them, doing what they wanted to do so they knew I valued what they were interested in. And I wanted to encourage other parents to do that. And then I started just sharing like stories of emotional challenges we were having, and um, inspirational memes and stuff like that, and just my way of parenting. And somebody actually said, "You really should write a book on all of this." And I was like, "Gosh, I would love to." And it took until this year where I finally said, "You know what? I'm doing it.
Good for
I'm
you.
getting this out there for everyone."
Good for you. And the thing about it is parenting is complicated. It is
Mhm.
complex. It is no kid is born identical, even identical twins. Like, I mean, my bonus kids are identical twins, but they are very different human beings, right?
Mhm.
And so every kid is unique. And God knows they certainly do not come with a manual in how to raise them,
For
right?
sure.
And so, like I think so many of us are worried about our kids. We're worried about how they're interacting with their world, what they're learning about themselves. And I think we also worry that we are handing down some of our own stuff, if you will,
Mhm.
onto them. And that is, I think for some of us, it scares us. And I think others of us, we are like, hey, this is an awareness that I need to be intentional in how I parent. And
Yeah.
and I'll be the first to admit, I have read so many parenting books over the years because it's important to me to be the best parent I can be. And I also know that I'm so perfectly imperfect, right?
Exactly.
Right. And being able to say, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing my best. And I want my kids to be badass humans who own their truth, right?
100%.
And that's what's so beautiful about your book. Like, what is so beautiful about it is the way that you describe, and I have to just get to this. I love the way you describe with vulnerability some of the interactions you've had with your own kids, where your kids have said, Mom, could you please not yell at me in front of my friends?
Mhm. Ooh, that brought tears to my eyes. Yeah, that was a pivotal moment for sure. Because we're all human. None of us are perfect. But that was one of the patterns that was handed down to me. Was I come from a long line of screamers. And I swore to God, if I ever got the chance to be a parent, because we struggled to become parents, that I would never, ever raise my voice to my child. But you don't know how deeply ingrained it is until you're in the situation. And having children triggered all of that for me. And all my anger that I thought I had gotten over, but I had really just
Right?
shoved down because I didn't actually
Mm.
work on it. I just kind of ran away from it. All started coming back up, and I was screaming horribly at my poor little kids. And when she said that to me, I just stopped in my tracks and was like, "What the F?" Like, oh my God. Like, I didn't scream at them in public, but at home I did. way too often, obviously not all the time, but enough that I knew it was an issue and a problem that I had to work on. And when she said that, it was just a light bulb moment of, wow, this is really affecting her. She's embarrassed. She's ashamed. I have to figure out how to stop this.
You have to figure out how to stop this. And, owning those feelings of recognizing that this stuff has come up for you. This is where you're at. This is the moment of parenting where you're like, oh dear, I am repeating patterns that I swore I wouldn't. And I have to find a path forward. So what would you say? What would you offer to a parent? How would you invite a parent to move through that experience for themselves?
The best thing I did for myself, because I was reading tons of parenting books too, and they would help temporarily. And the biggest thing I did for myself was to hire life coaches and to get to my issues at the subconscious level and break those patterns there, because we don't realize how deep they go. And just it helped to have friends to talk to who were like, oh my gosh, I lost it on my kids today and I feel horrible. That always helped to know I wasn't alone. But until
Mm,
I really did the inner work to break these patterns at the subconscious level and to learn to love myself, to
mm.
learn to understand that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay that I've messed up and I can love myself and respect myself and move forward. And I tell my kids all the time, look, I'm human.
Well, and
I am not perfect. Perfection is a lie. Give me grace. I'll give you grace. We're all going to make mistakes and we're going to get through it together.
we're going to get through it together. And we're going to get through it together. Kat, how old are your kiddos?
They are 12, 9, and almost 7.
So you've got a range of kiddos, and you're really, at this point you're moving into the teenage years, and so there's going to be more things coming. And I
Okay.
know that, when I was reading your book, it's broken down into 4 sections, right?
Yes.
The first section you've already talked a little bit about is like quality time. We've also talked about embracing those emotions a little bit. But
Mhm.
one of the things that I loved was what you said about labels. Let's talk a little bit about saying no to labels.
Okay. Labels are huge. They and people just don't even know they're doing it. Like it's just such a subconscious thing because we've grown up just constantly giving people labels. And what parents have to really think about is kids are always evolving. They're always changing.
Yeah.
And to allow them to go through these different experiences in life without labeling them, without saying, oh, you're shy, you're a brat, you're bad at math, whatever it is, like you're a bad student. When you label these kids, it puts them in a box and they're not allowed to fully reach their full potential because they believe what you tell them about themselves.
Oh my
And if
God, right?
100%,
Well, and here's the thing, like, in the work that I do and in the trifecta of joy, I talk about the inner critic, right?
yeah,
And the inner critic is trying to serve you stew from your childhood, and it's those labels that we're talking about. So we know that some of our own limiting beliefs are from labels that were applied to us
yes,
however many years ago.
yeah,
So we need to be mindful of the labels that we are putting on our kids and how that will impact their box
yeah,
now and in the future.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because I believed everything that was told to me, and I'm not that person. it's wild how ingrained it gets in them, and like you said, it becomes their inner critic. It's how they judge themselves. It's how the outside world's gonna judge them, and it's not fair because they're not that person. A child is not their behavior.
And that is such an important statement. One of the things, of course, in the social work world that I come from
Right,
is, we talk about children and behaviors, and unfortunately, a lot of kids come with labels because of their experiences, because
right.
of their differing abilities and those kinds of things. But then we are also throwing other labels on top. And again, that is not who the child is, right? That is not who the child is. And so what you're describing is that, like they are not defined by their experiences. They are defined by their being.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's hard to not label them because that's what you're used to. And I caught myself doing it, calling one of my daughters shy and then reinforcing that. And she got shyer until I realized, wait a second, what am I doing to this poor kid? And then started asking her, like, do you want to say hi? Do you want to place your order at the restaurant? Like instead of just assuming, oh, she's shy, I'll do it for her. And then she was able to start blossoming.
That invitation into that space for herself, eh? Wow.
Absolutely.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so I've got to ask, as this book is getting ready to be published, what was the hardest part for you in writing it?
Well, the hardest part for me was living it as I write it, to stay true to everything I was writing and be present with my kids. Because I was so into the book and wanting to, write it and get it out there. And then I homeschool, so they're home all the time with me. And they'd come in and be like, "Hey, I need this." And I'm like, "Not now." And then I'd be writing a section of the book and go, "Oh, yeah, I just totally told my kid to go away. Okay, pause book. Let's go. Okay, what did you need? I'm sorry." But it was really hard to do that. Like, I missed some of the monthly dates because I just was not able that month to do both. And it was really important to get this out. And of course, I talked to them about that and they understood. And we've been doing the monthly dates for years. And if we miss a month here and there, it happens. Some months are busier than others, but we do our best to do it every month. But yeah, it was hard.
And what I hear is that you are communicating differently about it too, right? Like you're recognizing that it's still important and that it will happen, but right now we've got to shift some priorities in the interim, and this is what it looks like. That's why, and that's what I call harmony, right? Identifying where that energy needs to go and being able to communicate along the way is the harmony, right? Because when we try to have balance, which
That's
I think is bullshit, it doesn't work.
beautiful.
What's that?
I said your harmony description is beautiful, and I laughed at the balance as bullshit because, yeah, I never thought of it that way. But
Yeah.
it's true. It's hard to balance all aspects of life at once.
It is. It is. And we think balance is like something we should be striving for, but in reality, it's about a shift in priorities and flow in order to create harmony. That's what I say. And so what you did
I
though,
love that.
what you've done though, is you've modeled that with your kids, right? So that is the element of role modeling that you offer. And what I love about this book is it gives your readers, me as a parent, reminders of the importance of the awareness of my parenting and who I am as a parent, and how I can positively affect the future of my own humans as they grow into adulthood.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
It's a beautiful book. I have to ask though, I have to
Mm,
ask, Why did you decide to name it Raising Badass Humans?
Badass became our family word. It started 5 years ago now. I started bringing my kids hiking. My husband had a job in San Diego where we lived, and we were in the process of moving to Las Vegas. So me and the kids moved to Las Vegas when the house was ready, but my husband had to finish his job for 5 months more in San Diego. And so I was alone with the kids for the first time all the time. And my favorite thing to do was hike, but I hadn't really been bringing them to do it. And I was like, well, we live right next to Mount Charleston. It's a gorgeous mountain. Like, that's where we're spending our days. It's like 25 degrees cooler up there compared to Vegas. So we would go there a lot. And I was so impressed. At the time, they were only 7, 4, and 1.5.
Oh,
And they
wow.
were badass hikers. Like, they would be encouraging me, come on, mom, we're going to make it to the waterfall. Don't give up. And I'm like, where did these kids come from? It's amazing. And I just started saying, wow, you guys are badass. And that kind of stuck and became like our motto, to be badass. Yeah, we just kind of ran with it. It became our family word. We called ourselves the Badass Hiking Family. And then it just kept modeling. And then I started thinking, what does badass mean to me? And it meant somebody who lives in their truth. And that's who I want my kids to be. So I was like, all right, I'm going to raise badass humans. And then when it came time to write the book, I struggled with it because I knew it would keep me out of certain areas that I wouldn't be accepted in. And
Right?
then
Because some people think badass is a bad word.
bad word, or it means, that they're bad people or something like that. But to me, my meaning of it and my definition is somebody who stands in their truth. And that's what I want my kids to be. And I realized it would attract the right people to me.
People who want to raise badass humans, right? Absolutely.
Exactly.
People who want to raise badass humans. Okay, now I want to go back to badass because badass does
Sure.
stand for brave, authentic, decisive, accepting, strong, and supportive. Of those words, which one do you think is the most important?
Authentic. To
Authentic.
your authentic self.
Let's just sit with that
Love
for a
that.
second because authenticity, I mean, I could cry. I agree. So, Kat, why is authenticity so important to you?
Because I grew up not being able to be myself. I was told how to feel, how to think, what to do. I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and my mom was a single mom for most of it. And it was not easy on her. So she had to work a lot of jobs. She wasn't around a lot. And my older siblings had to step up, and they weren't in a mental mind space to do that. And so I was just constantly told who I should be, how I should feel, what to think, and told my opinions were wrong. And I didn't realize that opinions can't be wrong. I was very much talked to like, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. And
Wow.
I really 100% lost sight of who I was. By the time I was ready to start dating, I just took on my boyfriend's personality. Oh, he likes that, then I like that. And looking back at it, there's so many things about him I disagree with that I'm like, how could I even for a second think that was true to me? But I was so convinced that I just had to be somebody else so that I could belong and fit in and be loved.
And so now, as you experience life as your authentic self, I hear that it is so important that your kids have the opportunity to be their authentic selves always.
It is the most important thing to me as a parent. My kids need to know they have a voice because I didn't have one. And as you can tell, it brings me to tears even thinking about it. But it is 100%. And of course, there's a battle there because I still have to be the parent and my ego gets in the way sometimes. But when I can stop and I can breathe and I remind myself they have a right to disagree with me, they have a voice, they get to have their own opinions, and teach them that everybody else gets their own opinion too.
And
It's
it's
the big
okay to disagree, right? It
yes,
is okay to disagree.
100%.
Kat, I love this book. I love what you are putting out into the world. How can people find out more about you, the work you're doing, and get your book?
They can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, I am Coach Kat Mullin. On Facebook, I have a Facebook page called Kat Mullin, self-awareness coach and communication expert, that they can like and follow.
One last thing,
Yes.
as our listeners are getting ready to close out this podcast, what is one piece of advice you would give to a parent who worries about how they are parenting their kiddos?
The best piece of advice I can give is to look inward, to be your child's best example by working on yourself first, by allowing your own emotions and letting them see that you have emotions and that's okay. Let them see that you get angry and sad. Because so many parents think they have to be strong for their kids and always be fine. And kids know when you're not fine. So tell them, yeah, I'm sad today, and that's okay. Allowing it. I'm feeling it, and I'm going to get through it. Let them see that, and let them know that you're constantly working on you to be a better person, a better version of yourself at all times. Be that model for them.
Be the model of working on yourself first and making sure that you are modeling what self-love is
Yes.
with authenticity. Let them see the
Yes.
with authenticity. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes. Right? Oh my gosh. Oh, Kat,
I
this has
love it.
been such a beautiful conversation. I am so grateful that you were able to come and tell us about your book, Raising Badass Humans, available on Amazon. To our,
Woohoo!
I know, I can't believe. Oh, listeners, thank you for listening and joining Kat and I for an awesome conversation. I hope that it inspires you to not only get Kat's book, but also remember that it is a gift to be able to raise badass humans. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. And remember, this podcast was brought to you by Perfectly Imperfect Life Coaching. All my love. Mwah.
Mwah. Thank you so much for having me.